everybody. Pastor Sean here with the Discipleship Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5. We're talking about the Apostle Paul, and it's going to blow your mind today because what we're finding is that there are so many similarities to what Paul had to go through in Acts chapter 14 and what we face today with people, with circumstances, and we have to learn, like the Apostle Paul, that no matter what the opinions of people are, and no matter what the circumstances we face, we have to keep pressing on. Nothing changes in terms of people. Now, of course, everything changed. Obviously, that was 2,000 years ago. There's obviously greater technology. Obviously, there's any technology, right, that exists. But if you looked at social media today and what Paul was dealing with in Acts chapter 14, you would find it's exactly the same in terms of people, in terms of opinions, in terms of what he had to deal with. You could find that there are followers, that he's getting a lot more followers, that there's thumbs ups, right? That there's subscribers, you would say, because they're following him. There's high opinions and praise and heart emojis and all that from the people. And you find that there's trolls that come in, and then you find that opinions change, and you find that Paul gets canceled, all in Acts chapter 14 within a couple verses of each other. So even though it's not social media, it's the people, and social norms and social opinions are exactly the same. It's crazy. So think about the similarities to what we find today to what he had to deal with, okay? Exactly the same. But what we find is this, and the truth that I want to start with today is that the Apostle Paul, and as disciples of Jesus ourselves, our opinion and our perseverance does not change about our value in God, about our purpose that God calls us to, and about how much God loves us. Our view of these things does not change based on circumstances, especially those circumstances involving people and their attitudes and perceptions and changes, okay? None of that changes. So, our value, our purpose, and how much God loves us does not change depending on circumstances, because we can all say we've had some circumstances that we would rather have not had, and we may still be working through, or it took us a long time to work through them, but God loves us. And we're going to see here that Paul's mission doesn't change, his value doesn't change, how God sees him never changed, nor does his resolute heart. He presses on even through the craziest, worst circumstances you're going to find here, okay? It's amazing. It's going to blow your mind. And if you thought us getting canceled for some reason on social media was bad, take a look at what he has to deal with, okay? So the first thing I want to point out is this. Acts chapter 14, him and Barnabas, Paul and Barnabas, were preaching boldly about the grace of the Lord, and the Lord proved their message was true by giving them power to do miraculous signs and wonders. This is verse 3. The Lord proved their message about Jesus was true by giving them power to do miraculous signs and wonders, right? So that's what was happening, is they had all this power from God to show that the truth about Jesus was being preached, and God was happy, right? But even though that happened, some people didn't believe. So we see in verse 8, Paul and Barnabas go to Lystra and Derbe. I think I'm saying that right. While they were at Lystra, Paul and Barnabas came upon a man with crippled feet. He had been that way from birth, so he had never walked. Key to the story. He was sitting and listening as Paul preached. Looking straight at him, Paul realized that he had faith to be healed. That's a whole sermon for another time, that he had faith to be healed. But the story here is that he was crippled from birth, never walked, and people knew that. They knew him, they knew the situation. So Paul called to him in a loud voice, "Stand up!" And the man jumped to his feet and started walking, right? Everybody around is thinking that that's pretty crazy, because it was crazy good. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in their local dialect. That's important to the story. "These men are gods in human form." They decided that Barnabas was the Greek god Zeus, and that Paul was Hermes, since he was the chief speaker. Verse 13. Now the temple of Zeus was located just outside the town, so the priest of the temple and the crowd brought bulls and wreaths to flowers to the town gates, and they prepared to offer sacrifices to the apostles. So the reason their local dialect was important is that even though Paul spoke Aramaic, Greek, Hebrew, and all that. He didn't know that that's what was going on, and he didn't, and Barnabas didn't know what was going on because they had done it in their own dialect. So the key to this is that they thought, wow, everybody responded to this miracle and they're learning the truth about Jesus. So, Lord, you're glorified in this situation. And then the truth hit. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard what was happening, they tore their clothes in dismay and ran out among the people, shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We're merely human beings just like you. We have come to bring you the good news that you should turn from these worthless things and turn to the living God who made heaven and earth, the sea, and everything in them. In the past, he permitted all the nations to go their own ways, but he never left them without evidence of himself and his goodness." Okay, this is Paul talking still. "For instance, he sends you rain and good crops and gives you food and joyful hearts." Right? Now, this is crazy. Verse 18. This is nuts. "But even with these words, Paul and Barnabas could scarcely restrain the people from sacrificing to them." If you were to put that in today's context, Paul and Barnabas were preaching, trying to get the truth, and they had thumbs up emojis, heart emojis. They had a stadium full of people saying how awesome they are, right? And what their words about Jesus didn't matter because they were caught up in this frenzy about this great thing that's happening and what was in their midst. Well, Paul and Barnabas were trying to do the right thing, saying, we're humans, we're not gods, right? But the people were all about them. And this is the same heart that people have. Watch how quickly things turn. Now, we don't know if this was 30 seconds or 5 minutes or a day, whatever, probably less than a day. But here's the deal. Even with these words, Paul and Barnabas could scarcely restrain people from sacrificing to them. That's verse 18. Verse 19, check this out. "Then some Jews arrived from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowds to their side." So here we go. We've got Paul and Barnabas trying to preach the truth, people responding well, even though they don't understand exactly what's going on. They know they like it, right? It was good. And then some trolls came in and changed the opinions of the crowd. Specifically, then some Jews arrived from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowds to their side. Again, this is one verse after verse 18, where it said they could barely restrain the people from sacrificing to them. And now, the second half of verse 19, they stoned Paul and dragged him out of town thinking he was dead. So look at how quickly that changed. He got canceled hard, right? He got canceled hard because the crowds went from getting bowls and wreaths to worship them as humans to hearing the truth to really not changing their opinions of what they wanted to do because of all the good things that came around. And then some people came in and started spreading some lies about them. And then the crowds turned on a dime. And not only did they cancel him, but I'm going to read this again. Imagine if this is how the internet was, right? They stoned Paul and dragged him out of town thinking he was dead. So they went from sacrificing a bull or trying to sacrifice a bull to him, throwing wreaths in front of him and Barnabas because they were gods. So that's what they thought. And now they literally picked up rocks, chucked them at Paul, hit him in the head, hit him wherever until they thought he was dead. So imagine this happening, okay? Barnabas is there. These people stirred up the crowds, all these crowds. Everything's over now because the guy who was talking about all this and the lies that were spread about him by these trolls basically left Paul for dead, literally left him for dead because they hit rocks. He dragged, not only did he just fall down, they dragged him out of town. Obviously, he was lifeless because they're like, well, forget this. And they turned on him. He got canceled. Literally, his life got canceled, is what all these people were saying. And then they left. So it was over. So now on to the next thing, right? So here's the reality, though. This is, I don't know if we would do this because most of us would wake up. I don't know if he was actually dead or if he was unconscious and lifeless. I don't know if he was breathing or not breathing. It doesn't actually say, right? But he was left for dead. He looked dead. They all thought he was dead. And what happened next? But, this is verse 20, as the believers gathered around him, he got up and went back into the town. Okay. So obviously he was left for dead. don't know if he was unconscious temporary, don't know if he was actually dead, and they prayed for him. It doesn't say. But they thought he was dead. Believers gathered around him, obviously prayed and tried to figure out what was happening here. He got up and it didn't say he got up and was alive again, and they nursed his wounds and tried to talk to him and get him to eat something. No, that's not what it says. What happened here? This is crazy. As the believers gathered around him, he got up and went back into the town. He got up and went back into the town. So they stoned him, threw rocks at him till he was left for dead, and then got up. I could just see him doing this, dusting himself off. I'm not done yet. God is not finished with me, with these people yet. And he got up, dusted himself off, and went back into the town. I don't know what he said to people. I don't know if he found certain specific people. It just says he did that. So if we are to look at the circumstances, say we go online, say I have this video here and it's on YouTube or it's on one of the podcast channels if it's the audio version that you're listening to, and everything's going good. He's talking about the Bible. He's talking about this and that. And then something happens or somebody makes some comments and everything changes and opinions are turned. And all of a sudden everybody's like, unsubscribe, delete, hate, thumbs down emojis, whatever you want to do on the internet, all the trolls that come in and try and turn people's opinions away. That's just a circumstance and it's minor. It doesn't affect me. I don't care, right? I don't care if people love it or hate it. I'm trying to be obedient to what God has called me to. That's what Paul and Barnabas were doing. They preached Jesus. The people misunderstood that they weren't gods. And then when he started talking about God, people came in and changed the opinions of the truth that they were speaking. And of course, they tried to kill him and left him for dead. It doesn't matter what we're doing media wise. What matters is that we're obeying God and that we're not letting circumstances, because our circumstances on this social media, on this whatever videos, on this audio podcast mean nothing compared to people actually physically killing him or trying to kill him or thinking he was already dead because of the rocks that they threw at him and hit him with. Okay. What we face in circumstances is nothing compared to what Paul faced in circumstances. Many times over, he was whipped, he was beaten, he was thrown in jail, he was ridiculed and persecuted, and that was pretty standard. It was pretty standard that people didn't believe, even though he passionately went after it with all he had. People still didn't believe. Even though God worked through him to perform miracles, people still didn't believe him. But Paul wasn't responsible for making people believe, and this is the key as disciples. He was responsible for hearing from God and doing what God said. And God told Paul, for some reason, in some way, I don't know the specifics because it's very, very light on the details in this couple verses of the Bible. But Paul knew that God was not done with him yet and that he had to press on no matter what the circumstances were. He had to press on no matter what the people said or did. He had to press on and go back into town because that was what God was speaking to him to do, even if they stoned him again and dragged him out of town again. It doesn't say they did that, but we don't know why he went back in. But we do know that he went back in because he was not done yet. So it's amazing if you think about that. He's left for dead. Obviously, probably got some blood and some bruises if he got hit by rocks. And they gathered around him. Again, was he unconscious, dead? We don't know. He gets up and he doesn't just say, wow, that was rough, man. He doesn't quit because the circumstances are too tough. He doesn't quit because he's injured and doesn't feel like he can go about doing what he was doing. He doesn't draw back and become weak. He doesn't draw back and become scared. At the risk of his own life, again, he goes back into town. Would you be able to do that? Would I be able to do that? I don't know. Until I'm in the circumstance, I don't know. But here's the thing. As disciples of Jesus, as followers of Jesus, if we only see Jesus as a concept, if we only see Jesus as a theoretical person out there that we're not close to, and if we only say, well, I only know what other people have said about Jesus, and we don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, we're not going to have the resolution to continue doing what God asks us to do, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the people are saying or doing. I don't know if he could even see. Maybe his one eye was closed up, and maybe he got hit with a rock. I don't know. Maybe he was fine. Maybe all of these wounds were instantly healed, and he went back in and impressed people. I don't know. It doesn't say. But I know that the example we're supposed to learn from this story about Paul is that when God calls you to something, you do it. When God calls me to something, I do it. I obey. Is it always easy? No. Is it something that I have done perfect all of my life? No. But you know what? If I'm dead on the ground, or if I'm beaten on the ground, or I'm unconscious, it's great to have people pray for me. It's great to have others lift me up. But even that doesn't matter. What matters is that I know Jesus, as we've talked about for 4 episodes and continue on today. I know Jesus so well, and I listen to Jesus, and I hear his voice. And when he calls me to something, I have to do it. Some of the things that we have to deal with is, let's do a comparison between our lives and Paul, is we have to forgive others. Well, did Paul go back in and start throwing rocks back at them? No, I doubt it, because that's not what God called him to. He went in, and his thing is Jesus' thing. We have to forgive those who hurt us. Maybe we have been hurt physically, and it's super hard to forgive. I get that. Maybe we've been betrayed. Maybe people have turned on us, and it's super hard to forgive. I get that. But I do know this, that God calls us to forgive. God calls us to let him deal with the person that hurt us. We have to say, God, you've forgiven me. I was not right with you. I accepted, I believed and received Jesus. And so now I'm right with you. So I want to move forward in these things, not to make myself saved. I want to move forward as an overflow of what you've already done for me. And the biggest thing is that God forgave us, even though we didn't deserve it. And so we have to move forward in that, because God's operating system is grace, mercy, and forgiveness. Okay? That's how God operates. So when we move forward, just like Paul had to go back into that town, it didn't say that he went in like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood in one of their movies and went in and took care of business. It doesn't say that. What it says is that he went back in, and he didn't care what people did to him. He didn't care about the opinions of others. He didn't care about the negative consequences. He didn't care about the trolls. He cared to follow through with what Jesus had asked him to do. Most of us, at least in North America, are not going to have a circumstance where somebody literally throws rocks at us and leaves us for dead, and we have to go back and talk to them and forgive them. Maybe you've been hurt by someone that's close to you, a family member, a friend, or maybe a random stranger. And we have to say, God, I'm willing to forgive, but we can't do it on our own. The only way we can forgive is by the power of the Holy Spirit moving in us. You want to talk about a miraculous sign that other people will know that Jesus is real? Yes, there's healings. Yes, there's speaking in foreign languages and having people understand, like they did at Pentecost, right? And speaking in tongues and other people hearing their own languages. Those are all amazing things, right? Miracles happening. You want to have people blown away about the reality and the truth about Jesus? Have forgiveness for that person. Have forgiveness and show forgiveness for someone who doesn't deserve it. People will notice that and say, there's something about this person. They have genuine joy. They are genuinely different than they used to be. They are genuinely following Jesus no matter what's happening. And that is the miracle that we can start with right now, to say, I'm going to preach Jesus, and I'm going to live like someone who's been forgiven. And I'm going to do that by showing that to other people. Not through our own strength, because I cannot forgive. I cannot get over offense in my own strength. I have to, as we said in the earlier episodes here, we have to lay it down at the foot of the cross. We have to lay it down and say, Jesus, give me the strength to be like you. Give me the strength to not be offended. Give me the strength to forgive. Give me the strength to roll up my sleeves and walk forward in what you've called me to. And maybe it starts with forgiveness, or maybe you've already crossed that hurdle and you don't know what to do next. Well, whatever God's putting on your heart to do, that lines up with the Bible and lines up with Paul's example and lines up with Peter, lines up with Jesus' life, whatever God puts on your heart, do it. It's easy. Just do it. It's also the hardest thing you're ever going to do. And if we try and do it in our own strength, or we don't understand because we're not asking Jesus and taking the time to hear and to listen, then it's going to be very difficult. But Paul had no choice because he was so close to the heart of God. He was so close to Jesus that he knew in his personal life, at that moment in time, he knew what had to be done. He wasn't finished, even though he was left for dead. He got up. I could see him rolling up his sleeves, heading back into the town to finish what God asked him to do. I'm actually glad that it's kind of vague on what that was, because it doesn't matter, because we're not going to be in that exact situation more than likely. But the principle of doing what God said, the next thing in our lives, and maybe it's something so simple. Forgiveness is a huge one, right? Maybe it's just reaching out to that neighbor, or maybe it's volunteering at your church in a ministry that you feel God calling you to, but you're hesitant about. Maybe it's putting yourself out there vulnerably to start a small group and wondering if anybody will show up. Whatever God's drawing you to next, maybe it's missionary to a different country, or maybe it's a missionary to a local food shelter. Whatever God's putting on your heart, do it. Do it next. And that will get us to be in principle and in heart like Paul, because we're hearing God. He's putting it on our heart, and then we need to go obey whatever that is, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of how we feel, physically or otherwise, and regardless of what people say, do, or think about us. Because the only opinion as disciples of Jesus that matters is God. And out of the love and the knowing of Jesus, we're responding to him and him alone. And that's what we do as disciples. Have I always done it again? No. Is it always easy? No. But the closer we get and the more time we spend without the distractions, without people, and listen to Jesus and his heart, the more we'll be able to do it, no matter what it is, just like Paul did. God bless you guys. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one.